Hi again then guys, and welcome to the first of two reviews which we're going to be putting out today and tomorrow for the brand newly dropped, if that's even a sentence, Vision GT Audis, which of course we knew we were getting. I thought we were getting it at the same time as the Toyota, the new Supra, but apparently not. And also, for those who haven't heard perhaps, there seems to be something of a rumour that the Lancia 037 Stradale might be coming to the game, but more news on that as we get it. For now though, we have these two pretty potentially cool Audis in the game. I know a lot of you guys don't care for Vision GT cars. Well, what can I say? You clicked on the review, so what did you expect? For those of us who do like the Vision GT program, which I would include myself in that, but with the caveat, as many of you guys know, if it's imaginative. I have no interest in seeing what the next range of cars from a company is going to look like. What I have interest in is a Chaparral laser-powered monster car, or a 400 mph Tomahawk. Use your imagination. They don't need to be useful for racing. Slap them in Gr.X if you want to, that's justified. Completely so, just like with the Red Bull. But then occasionally, you get some cars which kind of straddle the line between the two, and occasionally, very, very occasionally, you'll see a Vision GT car that actually transfers over to the real world, at least to some degree as well. The Fittipaldi, for instance, has kind of done that. I believe they still plan to produce that as a purchasable supercar. Not sure about any news on that, I haven't checked on it in a while. That's a great car, as far as I'm concerned, kind of like America's Zonda. I really love the concept, love the way it drives. This one also already has a real-world counterpart, and it's going to feature as, I believe it was a taxi vehicle for the Formula E series. That's so cool. I love the fact that it's a real car. Now, I had no idea, I don't know if anyone else already knew, but I had no idea that there were going to be two versions of this Audi, and first of all we're featuring the Gr.X version, which is the more powerful, it's the faster of the two, and just like with the Hyundai Vision GT, the N2025, there are some pretty big differences between the Gr.X and the Group 1. Both of them have similarities, of course, all-wheel drive, they're very visually similar, although there are some notable changes. The white grille, the rims are different, and also the fact, of course, that they're both Audis. So that's pretty similar as well. As far as performance, though, the way they get that is different. The transmission, for instance, totally different. The Group 1 version has a 7-speed gearbox, which, thankfully, you can tune. This one, on the other hand, doesn't. Single-speed, direct drive. And as a result of that, it sounds pretty awesome. Now, we're not told in the game what size the engine is. The other version's a 3.4 litre, but we'll get more into that one tomorrow with some pretty good advantages, actually, that car has. This one, though, has a pretty big power advantage. 803 horsepower, and it also has a whole lot more torque than the other car. The other car has 516 pound-feet. This car has 738. That's huge, but it kind of needs to be, because the weight is also huge on this car. In fact, you cannot take the weight any lower. On the other one you can, and again, we'll get more into that tomorrow, because that's one of the biggest advantages of the Group 1 version, but this one weighs the same as a Lister Storm on the previous Gran Turismo games. That's pretty hefty. 1,450 kilos doesn't sound that great. But of course, that's due to the fact that it's got a lot of battery packs to lug around, plus the all-wheel drive, which adds weight over rear-wheel drive, etc, etc. But that's the thing about modern tech. It does sometimes add weight, such as hybrid supercars, or a Nissan GTR, for instance, with all the tech that's in that, or a Bentley, or a Veyron. But more often than not, the thing that ties all of those cars together that I just mentioned is they're actually really good, or at the very least, really fast. So that bodes pretty well for this. Audi, of course, has a ton of experience in racing, especially with hybrid systems recently in the Le Mans, and of course with the Quattro system as well, in a direct way, as you can see from the livery of the vehicle, from one of their most dominant all-wheel drive race cars ever, the IMSA Quattro, which is an awesome car. It'd be cool if we got that in the game, but at the moment we don't. So what about actually driving this one? Because horsepower per tonne sounds, if anything, a little underwhelming at 554. So what can it actually do? Well, actually, it could do a lot. It's a pretty fast car. Now, as you'll see from the progressive laps in this video, it just keeps getting faster and faster and faster. In fact, the difference between my first lap and my last lap is about 3 seconds. It's like 2.8, basically. That's a pretty big margin to move up with a car that is already fast to begin with. Now, of course, I have no doubt that people could take it way faster than I could, but it is to be noted that this is a car which, at the same time as being very beginner friendly, it's got tons of grip, tons of downforce, etc., but it actually doesn't like being pushed to its limit in terms of how responsive it is, as much as something like, for instance, the Fittipaldi would, because of the all-wheel drive. This car has a lot of understeer under throttle in particular. You really need to hold off on the throttle until you know that you can give it the beans. So on a hairpin, for instance, you want to brake nice and early, let it cruise through the corner, then slam on the power. Let that direct drive, in effect, like spool up the acceleration. Feels like a turbine in some ways, which of course I love, but it's great to work with, for sure. It's extremely fast. It feels in some ways like a rally car, and the fact that it has a 50-50 torque distribution, which unfortunately you can't change, which I personally think is a shame, because I would much prefer this car with, say, a 30-70 split, just to loosen up that front end a little bit. But be that as it may, it's the kind of car that what you get is what you get. You cannot upgrade the diff, you can't change the gearing, you can do very little to the suspension. It's got 2.5 degrees of camber that you can't do anything about, which again is kind of counterintuitive to the all-wheel drive. It makes it unnecessary, really. You can adjust the downforce, you can increase the weight, but not decrease it, and you can't touch the power either way, which is interesting. I find that very interesting that you can't reduce it either. But overall, for 1,000,000 credits, it's the kind of car that if you're not interested in the Vision GT program, well, I don't understand why you watched this video, but thanks if you did anyway. I appreciate the support. For those of us who do like the Vision GT program, I think this is a cool one. I must admit that the only thing that I'm not a fan of is the looks. I don't think it's a bad looking car, but I think it's a little bit dull, a little bit generic looking. A lot of the Vision GTs share a very similar design style, and this one to me reminds me a lot of the Peugeot, which I've never been a huge fan of, and I don't mean the LC500, I mean the original Peugeot with all-wheel drive that's like 875 kilos, 875 horsepower, that big chunky one. It's a nice car in terms of performance, but I've never been a fan of the look. A little bit too angular, boxy, and kind of bland to me. And to me, the livery on this car is by far the best looking thing about it. If you take the livery away, it's actually quite a boxy, blank looking shape. But overall, that's down to personal opinion. What's not down to opinion is how fast it is. It's seriously fast. So if you get the chance to use it, of course, it's good for a bit of fun. As far as racing, not so much because of the Gr.X classification, but tomorrow, stick around on the channel because I'm going to be taking a look at the Group 1 car, which of course has a whole lot more use and some pretty big advantages over this one, in particular, the weight. But that's it for this review. Of course, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the other one, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.